Are we becoming so soft that we can't even accept winning anymore? That soft mentality that so many people are adopting is now leaching into one of the most physically demanding sports of all time, American football. This past Sunday, we saw two longtime divisional rivals battling it out at the very end of the season. Unfortunately, though, it wasn't actually much of a battle, as the Atlanta Falcons came into the game with a losing record of 7-9. And the New Orleans Saints had a just slightly better record of only 8-8. And by the end of the game, the Saints had won, improving their record to 9-8 and still missing the playoffs, but simultaneously making everybody go crazy. Now let me set the scene for you. There's 1 minute and 10 seconds left in the game. The score's 41-17. The Saints are absolutely destroying the Falcons. However, the Saints have possession of the ball thanks to an interception returned all the way back to Atlanta's 1 yard line. Now, the expectation here is that, of course, the game's over. It's 41-17. There's only a minute left. There's no chance the Falcons can come back and win. So the Saints coach, their offensive coordinator, does what any good coach would do. He calls for them to go out on the field and take a knee, run out the clock, win the game, and go home. However, that's not what happened. And by the end of the game, the score was 48-17, causing everyone to absolutely lose their minds. So you might be wondering, what happened here? Well, unfortunately, at least unfortunately for the Falcons, that is, the Saints players decided not to listen to what their coach had called. And instead, they decided to run a play that allowed their running back to score his one and only touchdown for the entire season. So the game ends, the Saints are victorious, and the team gets their guy a touchdown on the season. Now, of course, it's time for the customary handshake where both coaches meet at center field, shake hands, maybe hug, say good game, great season, and go their separate ways. However, you already know that is not what happened here. Because, of course, the Atlanta Falcons head coach felt immensely disrespected by the Saints head coach and the Saints team as an entirety, because they ran up the score with no chance of the Falcons winning and with almost no time left on the clock. So Atlanta's coach decides to tell the Saints coach exactly how he feels and how big of a piece of ish he is and his team is for running up the score and disrespecting him and his whole team. Now, you already know at the end of each game, there's also a press conference where the local media meets with the team to ask them questions about the game. And this generally happens with either the head coach or maybe a couple of the star players, or at least the standout players from that game. But in this press conference, none of the reporters cared about what happened throughout the game. They only cared about two things: what happened at center field between the two coaches, and why on earth did the Saints head coach decide to run up the score and be so ruthless and heartless towards those poor, lowly Atlanta Falcons? Luckily for us, though, these after-game press conferences are always recorded or even televised. So I'm going to play a quick snippet of the Saints head coach after the game explaining why on earth he decided to run up the score and bully those poor Atlanta Falcons.
That's not who we are. That's not how we operate. We should have taken a knee. So I want to apologize to them. There's a way we go about doing our business, and I wasn't happy about that.
All right. So there you have it. We have the Saints head coach saying that that is not who we are, and that is not how we operate. And they very simply should have taken a knee, which is indeed the call that the offensive coordinator made on the field. And then, of course, he promptly apologizes to them being the Atlanta Falcons as a team, and, of course, their head coach. He apologizes for his players not taking a knee and instead scoring a touchdown, which, might I remind everybody, is essentially the goal in the sport of football, to score touchdowns. And then he finishes off the clip by saying there's a way we go about our business, and he wasn't happy about that. But again, I would argue that his business is winning football games, and his team's business, his players' business, is to score touchdowns. I personally am not aware of any other way to score a touchdown. You can either run the ball in for a touchdown, which of course they did, or you can pass the ball for a touchdown, which they did not. They opted for the first one, running the ball in for a touchdown. I am assuming, however, though, that we're supposed to be upset because there's this imaginary, undefined, unclear, and invisible line that we're not supposed to cross. that says if we're winning, we can only win by so much, and that you have to be cognizant of your opponent's feelings and make sure not to do anything that might upset them. Some may even refer to this as having good sportsmanship. I'm going to play one more clip from the Saints head coach as he was not yet done complaining about how his team won that game.
They asked me about getting Jamal a touchdown at the end. I said I wanted to take a knee. The guys kind of wanted to get him a touchdown, and they did that on their own. That's unacceptable.
The Saints head coach says they asked me about getting Jamal a touchdown at the end. They, of course, being the Saints players. Jamal, in this case, is Jamal Williams, the running back who scored that touchdown at the end of the game. The coach, of course, tells his players, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to run a play. We're going to take a knee because that is the right thing to do. He then says, but the guys wanted to get him a touchdown. They did it on their own. They did it on their own without their coach's permission. And finally, he states that what his players did was unacceptable. So now we have a situation where the coach is essentially throwing his entire team underneath the bus for not following directions and doing what is just an absolute crime against humanity of scoring a touchdown that they technically did not need to win the game. Now, we all know competitive athletes tend to be very competitive individuals, and coaches tend to be, or at least strive to be, leaders of these very competitive individuals. But let's look at this from the player's perspective. Their supposed leader is now telling the entire world that they did this on their own. They did this travesty against humanity of scoring a touchdown when it was not absolutely necessary, and that they should take ownership in this, and that they should not be proud of what they've done. Now, let's be real here. He's scolding them on what has now become national television, a group of grown men who decided to do something good for their teammate. So going back to the original argument of, are we becoming so soft that we can't even accept winning now? The argument to be made in favor of what the players did here is very simple in my mind. In football, you hear these expressions all the time, and we're taught them from a very young age. You play hard, you play to win the game, you play every single quarter, every single down, and you play until they blow the whistle. These are all very common mantras and expectations that we always throw around when we're discussing the sport of football. But yet we still find ourselves in a situation where the players did exactly that. And now everybody's mad because the players did what they were supposed to do. They played hard and won the game. But hold up. I'm not here to just give you one side of the argument or one side of the story, because even in this situation, we need proper discourse, and we need to make an argument for the other side that what those dastardly Saints players did was just wrong, mean, and borderline evil. So I purposefully left out that those Saints players did something very sneaky and very underhanded. Those mean Saints players didn't just line up to run a play that would have scored them a touchdown. What they did do, though, is play a trick on the Atlanta Falcons. The New Orleans Saints lined up in what we call the victory formation, and that formation signals to everyone on the field that they are indeed going to take a knee, run out the clock, and win the game. So now, let me set that scene for you one more time. There's 1 minute and 10 seconds left in the game. The score's 41-17. The Saints have the ball, and they have it thanks to an interception that was returned to the 1-yard line of the Atlanta Falcons. The expectation is that the game is over, so the Saints coach does what any good coach does, and they call for the players to take a knee, run out the clock, and win the game. So the players take the field, line up in victory formation to kneel the ball, run out the clock, and win the game, just like their coach had asked them to do. The whistle is blown to signal the start of play. The Saints snap the ball, but they don't take a knee. It's a trick play. They hand the ball off to Jamal Williams, who quickly dives into the end zone for a touchdown. Again, those sneaky, dastardly Saints players. Have they never heard of good sportsmanship? Have they never heard of being a gracious winner? There was absolutely no need for them to score that touchdown there. They could have easily snapped the ball, kneeled down, and ran out the clock. That one extra touchdown didn't do anything to help them win the game, and it didn't do anything to help them improve their chances of going to the playoffs because, again, they didn't make the playoffs. So why did they do it? It seemed as if the Saints players weren't just running up the score, but they were doing it in a sneaky and underhanded way. But hold up. Here's a quote from one of the Atlanta Falcons defensive players who was on the field at the time when that play happened. He's a very well-known player. This is Mr. Calais Campbell. He states that he understands why the Saints players wanted to get Jamal Williams that touchdown. So Mr. Calais Campbell here doesn't have an issue with them scoring a touchdown. What he does have an issue with instead is the formation the New Orleans Saints lined up to score that touchdown in. He continues on to say, I wish they would have lined up in a run formation. Don't make it look like you're going to take a knee and then run the ball. I was just frustrated with that because I just feel like if you're going to do it, there's a way to do it. One final bit of context is when Mr. Calais Campbell says that he understands why the Saints wanted to get Jamal Williams that touchdown. He understands that Jamal Williams led the league in rushing touchdowns the previous season while playing for a different team. And as a Saints player, Mr. Williams had yet to score a single touchdown. So we have a player going from leading the league in scoring touchdowns while running to being unable to score a single touchdown the entire season. So of course it meant a lot for Jamal Williams and the other Saints players to make sure he was able to get at least one touchdown as a Saints player. All right, so where do we stand on this situation? Are the coaches, the disgruntled players, and anyone else who's claiming this as an act of poor sportsmanship, are they just soft and unable to accept victory or defeat? Or did the Saints players genuinely do something that was a detriment to all involved by not listening to their coach's play call and instead running a trick play at the very end of the game and scoring a very unneeded and unnecessary touchdown? Please, as always, let me know what you think about this. And of course, let's continue the discourse around good sportsmanship versus having a soft mentality and being unable to accept victory or defeat.